Hello, my name is Dr. Andrew Jones, and I am an assistant professor of contemporary communication here at LCC International University. I'm also the faculty advisor for the Listen First Club here on campus, and it's my pleasure this afternoon to talk to you about the topic of the speech that you just gave in participation with the International Public Speaking Competition for 2021. You might have noticed a few differences if you participated in previous years in this international public speaking competition hosted by LCC International University. This year, for example, we've partnered with the Listen First Project, an organization that works in the US to work through some of the social problems brought about by divisive culture. One of the reasons I'm excited that we've partnered with this fantastic organization is because their chief listening officer, Professor Graham Bodie, was a mentor of mine when I was a student at Louisiana State University, working on my PhD in communication studies. One of the things that I've really learned from Professor Bodie is about the importance of listening. So today, I want to talk with you a little bit about some of Professor Bodie's research, as well as how it ties into some of the work that I've done here at LCC International University. Overall, I hope that this talk both gives you a little bit more insight into the topic of listening and inspires you to consider LCC as an option for your future education. So first, I want to give you just a broad overview of what we're going to talk about today. I like to think about listening in terms of three questions. So we'll start with those three questions and dig a little bit deeper into each. The first question is, what are the three parts of listening? The second question is, what are the three parts of every story? And the third is, what three things should you keep in mind? This is an abbreviated version of a talk that I gave for the International Festival of Solidarity and Volunteering that took place here at LCC International University. So if you'd like to see an expanded version of my talk, feel free to check out the LCC media pages. We have the talk recorded on our YouTube channel. You can not only hear from me in a more extended way, but you can also listen to some of the excellent presentations from other faculty at LCC in our International Relations and Development program, as well as other majors that are represented here on campus. But first, what are the three parts of listening? I take this from the work that Graham Bodie and Deborah Worthington did a couple of years ago, where they presented the ABCs of listening. Now, the ABCs of listening are kind of easy to remember. It's the affective, behavioral, and cognitive elements of listening. Now, that may not sound easy to remember right now, but ABC is the easy way to go back to, wait, what were those three things again? Affective is giving attention. So we listen affectively when we give attention to someone else who's speaking. For small children, for example, this can be full face listening. If you've ever been around a small child working with their parent and they want to be understood, you may have seen them take their parent's face in both of their chubby little hands and turn so that they're looking eye to eye. That's the affective part. The second is the behavioral part, and this is the behaving like you're paying attention, looking like you're listening. So this is where, if you've ever had a teacher tell you, are you listening to me? Are you looking at me? They're asking about the behavioral components of listening. The third aspect, the cognitive aspect of listening, is thinking about what you're listening to. So this is the mental activity where you're processing what you've heard and you're making sense of it in order to really understand it. So again, the three parts of listening are the affective, giving attention, the behavioral, looking like you're listening, and the cognitive, thinking about what you're listening to. Moving forward from the three parts of listening, the second question is, what are the three parts of every story? I like this approach because it reminds us that we're building stories together with others. One of the great things about working and living here at Klaipeda at LCC International University is the opportunity to weave stories together. A recent alumni commented that it's about making connections with faculty and friends that last not only for your 4 years here, but for a lifetime. So when I think about those three parts of any story, I like to go back to a lecture that I was privileged to hear from Listen First Project's Chief Listening Officer, Graham Bodie, from 2020 as part of the International Listening Association's event. He argued there that every story includes three main parts. And this is important when we're listening to the stories that others are telling. So we're listening affectively, so we're giving them our attention. We're listening behaviorally, so we look like we're listening to them. And we're listening cognitively, so we're thinking about what we're listening to. And he says, when we're thinking about what we're listening to, when we're listening to their story, we need to pay attention to three things: the event, the durative description, and the evaluative information. Now, three big terms, three big concepts. What I love about working and studying at LCC is we take big ideas and distill them down into practical, everyday applications. Now, the first one shouldn't be too hard. You're listening for an event. When someone tells you the story of their day, you're listening for the event, what happened, and then what happened next. This is the basic level of listening that we all participate in when a friend is telling us a story and we say, "And then what happened?" But if you've ever had a conversation where the only comment your interlocutor, the person you're talking with, gives you is, "And then what happened?" you know that it feels a little bit childish and standoffish to end your listening there. That leads us to the second part. This is a big fancy concept, a term that you can turn around and use the next time that you listen to someone's story: the durative description. And all this talks about is, why is this event important to the person talking to me? And the way you can tell the durative description is you look for the parts that they emphasize. When someone's telling you a story about their day and they say, for example, "I was really upset. First I came home and then my mother yelled at me and then I couldn't finish my homework. I was so upset because, earlier that day, I don't know what happened. It's just like they broke up with me for no reason. So then I made a chocolate milkshake for myself and I made dinner." Now at this point, the event of their day has been told to you, but what do you think is the most important? I mean, it's not that hidden. It's right there, a major nugget. But if you're only listening to the event of the story, you might miss that the thing that led to your friend being upset is that their partner broke up with them. That little tiny piece of information is the key to unlock the rest of the story. People emphasize the important elements of their stories in all kinds of different ways. If you're interested in learning more tools about uncovering the durative description, I encourage you to check out our partner's website, listenfirstproject.org. There, the Chief Listening Officer, Graham Bodie again, has collected a lot of really valuable information, tips, techniques, and tricks for becoming a better listener yourself and participating in conversations that go that extra mile. But every story has three parts, and we've only talked about the first two, the event and the durative description. So let's talk about that third part, the evaluative information. Evaluative information is all about which parts are most important for you. Now, when I say important for you, I mean, what are the action steps that are implied as you listen to someone else's story? We make sense of our lives through stories. If you think about the story of your day, you would likely tell me about a series of events that took place, emphasizing some over others. But ultimately, that story would culminate in some request for action on my part. The action may be as simple as understand the progress of my day. It may be more complicated, such as find a way to help me in my present situation. As you listen for evaluative information, you're trying to understand the story of someone else in order to participate in a conversation as a good listener. So if we go back to the very first point, what are the three parts of listening? We're reminded that listening is affective, giving attention, behavioral, looking like you're listening, and cognitive, thinking about what you're listening to. When you're listening to someone else tell a story, it's important to keep in mind the three parts of every story. The event, the most basic, what happened when. Next, the durative description. Why is this story important to the person who's telling it? And third, the evaluative information. What is it that the person wants me to do as a result of having heard this story? And finally, I promised that we would also have three things that you can keep in mind. I like to think of these as the takeaway for any story that you've heard. And make no mistake, what you're hearing right now is a little story from me about what it would be like to attend a class here at LCC International University. So I'm going to give you 3 takeaways, things that I've distilled from my ongoing conversations with Professor Graham Bodie. First, be curious, not furious. Second, turn to wonder. And third, validation is not agreement. So the first, be curious, not furious. This is all about understanding where someone else is coming from instead of reacting emotionally immediately to the story that they're telling. This is about understanding someone's durative description. What are the parts of the story that are meaningful for them and evaluative information? What do they need from me in response? The second, turn to wonder. I love this phrase because, like many people, I've undertaken a 30-day journey to explore some different health options for myself. So exercising for 30 days, starting with the first of the year, doing yoga with Adriene, taking a 30-day running challenge or eating challenge or something like that. But what I found most helpful in all of these 30-day challenges to start off the new year is the way that it turns our attention to wonder what could be next. How could I be different in this new year? As we move past the turn to wonder, we get to this third point, which I think is so very, very important in today's very divided and divisive world. Validation is not agreement. To validate someone's feelings, to acknowledge that their expression of feeling comes from a place within themselves and is an expression of how they are processing the world in the moment, is not agreement with them about their particular point of view or perspective. To validate another's emotions is not to say, I agree with you, but rather to say, I hear that you feel this way. Moving to agreement is a different matter, a topic for persuasion, something that I teach here at LCC. As you move forward from this international public speaking competition, my sincerest hope, and part of the reason I was so excited when the admissions team invited me to participate in the international public speaking competition this year, is that I hope you will take forward one key principle, one thing that I hope each and every one of you will take forward in your daily life, in your academic career, in everything you do from this moment forward. And that is, from the motto of our partner organization, listen first to understand before responding. I hope that you will listen first both by giving attention. I hope that you will listen first by behaving listening, looking like you're interested in what others have to say. I hope that you will listen first cognitively by thinking about what the other person is saying, that you'll listen first to understand before responding. Before responding, that you'll understand the event that the person is telling you about, that you'll understand the durative description, what's important to the person telling their story, that you'll listen first to understand before responding. Because that last part, the evaluative information you've gathered from someone else's story, encourages you to respond with empathy, to respond with understanding. And the 3 tips that I would leave with you, particularly in a mediated environment where communication takes additional time, is to be curious about what others think, feel, say, and believe, rather than being furious with them. The second thing is to turn to wonder. To wonder, what makes you say that? How do you understand the world? And finally, to understand that validation with someone, to validate their feelings, their understanding, their perspective as a perspective, is not to agree with them. Separating out those 2 things opens up room for debate, and debate is a wonderful thing. As the Greek philosopher Plato might remind us, it's through debate that we come to understand truth. He embeds this in his process of dialectic. It's in the tension between 2 opposing views that we often find common ground that allows us to make good, sensible decisions for the future. So, today I've told you about a lot of different things. We've answered 3, I think, big and important questions. What are the 3 parts of listening? What are the 3 parts of every story? And what are 3 tips that we can take away? I've also talked to you a little bit about this wonderful place that I've enjoyed so much over the last 5 years, LCC International University. I hope that we'll see an application from you in the days and weeks ahead, and I hope that you have really and thoroughly enjoyed learning a little bit more about listening and participating in the International Public Speaking Competition this year. Best of luck to all of our competitors.